Every major criminal investigation begins with one question: who did it? But every once in a while, a case takes such an unexpected turn that investigators and the public begin asking a completely different question. Can the evidence itself be trusted? In this case, that question has become almost as important as finding the person responsible for Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Months after she vanished from her own home, investigators are no longer battling only an unknown suspect. They're also navigating conflicting public statements, disputed evidence, leaked investigative details, questionable ransom messages, and a growing wave of public speculation. Instead of the investigation becoming clearer over time, it has become increasingly complicated. And now, one explosive allegation threatens to change everything. According to a report discussed publicly by media insiders, investigators allegedly considered the possibility that someone connected to the media may have planted evidence near the crime scene. If true, it wouldn't simply be unethical. It would represent one of the most damaging forms of interference imaginable, forcing detectives to waste valuable time, manpower, and resources chasing evidence that never belonged there in the first place. But here's the problem. No one has been publicly charged. No official announcement has confirmed the allegation, and the identity of the alleged evidence remains uncertain. So how did the investigation reach a point where even the evidence is being questioned? To understand that, we have to go back to the beginning. From the moment Nancy Guthrie disappeared, the investigation carried all the hallmarks of a high-profile kidnapping, a missing woman, an apparent crime scene, reports of blood discovered outside her home, mysterious ransom communications, and a public desperate for answers. As investigators processed the scene, every item, no matter how insignificant it appeared, had the potential to become the breakthrough that solved the case. That's standard procedure in any major investigation. A discarded object, a footprint, a strand of DNA, a glove lying along a possible escape route. Anything could matter. Experienced investigators know that dismissing even a seemingly ordinary object can allow a critical piece of evidence to slip away forever. But collecting everything also creates another challenge. Not everything found near a crime scene is connected to the crime. Some items are simply random debris. Others belong to innocent bystanders. And occasionally, investigators encounter something far more dangerous. Evidence that was never supposed to be there at all. As search teams expanded the perimeter surrounding the area, multiple gloves were reportedly recovered. Initially, this didn't seem unusual. Disposable gloves are common, especially along busy roadways and public areas. But as more gloves continued to surface, attention quickly shifted toward whether one or more could have been connected to the person responsible for Nancy's disappearance. Naturally, investigators couldn't ignore them. Every glove had to be documented, collected, photographed, and tested. Even if there was only a small chance that one belonged to the offender, failing to investigate it could jeopardize the entire case. This is where crime scene investigations become incredibly demanding. Detectives aren't simply looking for evidence. Disposable gloves are common, especially along busy roadways and public areas. But as more gloves continued to surface, attention quickly shifted toward whether one or more could have been connected to the person responsible for Nancy's disappearance. Naturally, investigators couldn't ignore them. Every glove had to be documented, collected, photographed, and tested. Even if there was only a small chance that one belonged to the offender, failing to investigate it could jeopardize the entire case. This is where crime scene investigations become incredibly demanding. Detectives aren't simply looking for evidence. They're also trying to eliminate everything that isn't evidence. That process consumes enormous amounts of time. Every DNA sample must be compared, every fingerprint examined, every possible owner identified. Only after ruling people out can investigators begin narrowing their focus. It's meticulous work. And it's exactly why false leads can be so devastating. Then came a claim that sent shockwaves through those following the case. A well-known media figure stated that according to information he had received, investigators had privately considered whether someone in the media might have deliberately placed an item near the investigation to generate attention. The claim immediately ignited debate. Was the allegation credible? If investigators truly believed evidence had been planted, why had no charges been announced? Was there insufficient proof? Or was the information itself incomplete? No official confirmation answered those questions, but the discussion exposed a deeper concern. If investigators are forced to spend days or even weeks analyzing evidence that never belonged to the crime scene, that's time they aren't spending pursuing the real suspect. Every unnecessary laboratory test, every unnecessary interview, every unnecessary search, all of it diverts attention from finding the person responsible. Former investigators have repeatedly warned that even a single false lead can ripple throughout an entire investigation. Resources become stretched. Priorities shift. Momentum slows. And in cases where every hour matters, those delays can be costly. Yet the controversy surrounding the physical evidence wasn't the investigation's only problem. Another issue was unfolding at the very same time. Information, not evidence. Information. Details that many former investigators believe should never have reached the public were now becoming part of televised interviews and press discussions. Comments about DNA, references to forensic testing, discussions about investigative strategy. To some observers, these updates appeared harmless. To others, they represented something far more concerning, because investigators aren't the only people watching press conferences. If the perpetrator is still free, they are watching too. And according to numerous former law enforcement officials, every public statement has the potential to reveal far more than intended. Without realizing it, investigators may tell a suspect what evidence has been found, what evidence hasn't, and just how close or how far they really are. In many criminal investigations, silence is a strategy. Here, however, that silence appeared to be disappearing, and the consequences of that would soon become another major source of controversy. For most investigators, solving a crime isn't just about finding evidence. It's about protecting it. Every fingerprint, every DNA sample, every witness statement, every detail is treated as confidential for one simple reason. The less a suspect knows, the greater the chances they'll make a mistake. But in the Nancy Guthrie investigation, some experts began asking a troubling question. Was too much being revealed? As weeks turned into months, public interviews offered an increasingly detailed glimpse into the progress of the investigation. Officials discussed DNA analysis. They referenced genealogy testing. They spoke about forensic laboratories working across multiple states. To many people watching from home, these updates sounded reassuring. The investigation was active. The science was advancing. The case was moving forward. But to seasoned investigators, those same comments raised serious concerns, because every public update tells a story, not just to the public, but potentially to the person investigators are trying to catch. Imagine you're responsible for a crime. Every evening, you watch the news. Every interview, every press conference, every leaked report, you're trying to answer one question. What do investigators know about me? If officials reveal that DNA has been recovered, you now know you left biological evidence behind. They haven't found a direct match in existing criminal DNA databases. And if investigators publicly explain which evidence they're focusing on, you immediately know which mistakes they have and haven't discovered. This is exactly why many law enforcement agencies reveal as little as possible during active investigations. Information is often treated as another form of evidence. Once it's released, it can never be taken back. Several former investigators who publicly discussed the case emphasized the same principle. The suspect should never know how close investigators are. Even something that appears insignificant can influence future behavior. A guilty person may destroy evidence, contact potential witnesses, discard personal belongings, or simply disappear altogether. The offender would know. Later, during an interview or interrogation, those hidden facts become powerful tools. If a suspect mentions information that has never been released publicly, investigators may have evidence that the confession or the knowledge is genuine. But once those facts enter the public domain, that advantage disappears forever. The controversy didn't end with DNA. Questions also surrounded the growing collection of physical evidence recovered near the search area. Among the most discussed items were disposable gloves. Not just one pair, multiple gloves, recovered over time. At first glance, finding gloves near a roadway may not seem remarkable. High-traffic areas accumulate discarded items every day. But in a major criminal investigation, nothing can be ignored. Every glove had to be photographed, cataloged, collected, tested, compared. Glove belonged to the offender. It could contain fingerprints, touch DNA, fibers, or microscopic evidence capable of identifying whoever wore it. That's how criminal investigations work. You don't investigate only the evidence you believe. You investigate everything until you can eliminate it. Eventually, forensic testing reportedly connected at least one recovered glove to an individual who had no involvement in the crime. It was traced to an innocent source. Exactly the kind of result investigators expect when processing evidence collected from public spaces. But that discovery highlighted another challenge. If one glove was unrelated, how many of the others were as well? And more importantly, had investigators been forced to spend valuable resources examining objects that had absolutely nothing to do with Nancy's disappearance? The possibility, still unconfirmed, that someone connected to the media may have intentionally introduced misleading evidence into the investigation. To be absolutely clear, there has been no public confirmation proving that allegation. No criminal charge. No identified suspect. No official statement verifying that any evidence was deliberately planted. But the fact that experienced investigators publicly debated the possibility reveals just how uncertain parts of this investigation had become. And uncertainty is dangerous, because every false lead demands real investigative work. Crime scene technicians don't know an item is irrelevant until they test it. Laboratories don't know a DNA profile belongs to an innocent person until comparisons are complete. Detectives don't know a witness is mistaken until interviews have been conducted. Every false trail consumes hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks. Resources that can never be recovered. One former investigator described it perfectly. An investigation isn't simply about finding clues. It's also about protecting the integrity of every clue that already exists. Introduce confusion into that process, and the entire investigation slows down. Not because detectives aren't working, but because they're forced to separate truth from distraction. In a high-profile case surrounded by intense media attention, that's one of the greatest challenges investigators face. The louder the public conversation becomes, the harder it can be to hear the facts. And while investigators debated gloves, DNA, and leaked information, another mystery refused to go away. The ransom messages. Some believed they were genuine. Others dismissed them as opportunistic hoaxes. Even officials appeared cautious about discussing them publicly. But if the communications weren't authentic, then someone had deliberately targeted a family already living through unimaginable trauma. And if they were authentic, the investigation had taken an entirely different turn. Either way, the ransom notes would become yet another source of confusion in a case that already seemed overwhelmed by it. As investigators worked through DNA evidence, analyzed discarded items, and pursued countless leads, another mystery continued to divide both law enforcement and the public. The ransom messages. At first, they appeared to offer something every desperate family longs for, a sign that the missing person might still be alive. The messages demanded millions of dollars in cryptocurrency and claimed to come from the people responsible for Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. If they were genuine, they represented the first direct communication from the kidnappers. But if they were fake, they were exploiting a family's unimaginable grief. That distinction would prove incredibly difficult to make. Modern criminal investigations frequently attract opportunists. Some seek money, others crave attention, and some simply enjoy inserting themselves into high-profile cases. Investigators often refer to these individuals as noise. They flood tip lines with false sightings, send fake confessions, create fabricated evidence, or claim inside knowledge they never actually possessed. Each false lead must be evaluated because investigators can't afford to ignore the one tip that turns out to be real. But every hour spent disproving a hoax is an hour not spent pursuing the actual offender. That's the hidden cost of public fascination with major crimes. The louder the case becomes, the harder it can be to separate truth from fiction. As the investigation continued, public statements from different agencies appeared to fuel even more confusion. Questions emerged over who was responsible for evaluating the ransom communications. Some officials suggested federal investigators had taken the lead. Others indicated the case remained under local authority. To the public, the mixed messaging created uncertainty. Were investigators speaking with one voice? Or were different agencies working from different understandings of the same investigation? No clear answer emerged, and that uncertainty became another story of its own. For seasoned investigators, communication during an active case is almost as important as evidence collection itself. A single contradictory statement can undermine public confidence. Witnesses begin questioning what they've heard. Rumors spread across social media. Speculation replaces facts. And before long, the investigation risks becoming overshadowed by the conversation surrounding it. That's exactly what appeared to happen here. Instead of discussing potential suspects, people debated press conferences. Instead of analyzing evidence, they analyzed interviews. Instead of focusing on Nancy Guthrie, attention shifted toward disagreements between investigators, media personalities, and outside experts. The investigation itself had become the headline. Lost beneath all of the controversy was the person at the center of it all, Nancy Guthrie. Behind every headline, every televised debate, every online theory, was a family still waiting for answers. For them, this wasn't a mystery to discuss. It was their everyday reality. Every new rumor raised fresh hope. Every false lead brought another disappointment. Every conflicting public statement deepened the uncertainty they were already living with. As months passed, the emotional burden became impossible to ignore. While the public debated forensic evidence and investigative strategy, Nancy's loved ones were enduring something much more personal. The absence of certainty, the absence of closure, and perhaps most painful of all, the absence of Nancy herself. Lost beneath all of the controversy was the person at the center of it all, Nancy Guthrie. Behind every headline, every televised debate, every online theory, was a family still waiting for answers. For them, this wasn't a mystery to discuss. It was their everyday reality. Every new rumor raised fresh hope. Every false lead brought another disappointment. Every conflicting public statement deepened the uncertainty they were already living with. As months passed, the emotional burden became impossible to ignore. While the public debated forensic evidence and investigative strategy, Nancy's loved ones were enduring something much more personal. The absence of certainty, the absence of closure, and perhaps most painful of all, the absence of Nancy herself. The investigation also became fertile ground for conspiracy theories. Online communities began accusing innocent people. Family members found themselves defending against baseless allegations. Ordinary events were transformed into elaborate theories, without evidence to support them. Unfortunately, this pattern isn't unique. Nearly every high-profile criminal case now unfolds alongside an entirely separate investigation conducted on social media. Unlike professional investigators, internet speculation isn't bound by evidence. It thrives on possibility. And while some online communities genuinely hope to help solve crimes, others unintentionally create distractions that investigators must eventually address. The result is an environment where facts, rumors, and opinions become increasingly difficult to distinguish. Despite all the public debate, several important questions remain unanswered. Was the alleged planted evidence ever real? Or was that itself another misunderstanding? Were the ransom communications connected to the disappearance? Or merely opportunists exploiting a tragedy? Did public statements reveal more about the investigation than they should have? Or were they simply attempts to reassure an anxious public that progress was still being made? For now, those answers remain out of reach. What this case ultimately demonstrates is something far larger than a single investigation. Modern criminal cases no longer unfold quietly behind police tape. They unfold in real time, across television, across podcasts, across live streams, across social media. Every development is instantly debated, every statement dissected, every rumor amplified. Sometimes that public attention helps generate valuable leads. Other times, it creates a fog so thick that even experienced investigators struggle to see clearly through it. Finding the truth becomes more difficult. Not because there isn't evidence, but because there is simply too much information competing for attention. One lesson consistently emerges from experienced investigators across countless major cases. The most valuable evidence is often the evidence the public never hears about. The details kept confidential, the facts known only to investigators and to the person responsible. Those hidden pieces are often what solve the case. Not headlines, not speculation, not viral posts. For now, Nancy Guthrie's disappearance remains a painful reminder that some of the greatest obstacles in a criminal investigation aren't always created by the offender. Sometimes they're created by confusion, by misinformation, by competing narratives, and by the overwhelming pressure that comes with investigating a case under the constant glare of public attention. Until investigators uncover definitive answers, one truth remains undeniable. A family is still searching. Investigators are still working. And somewhere within the evidence, beneath every rumor, every theory, every leaked detail, and every unanswered question lies the truth of what really happened. The challenge now is making sure that truth isn't lost beneath the noise.